hopefully you have already printed off your seed starting workbook. I'm going to walk you through the workbook to explain everything now, so it hopefully makes sense when you start diving in to the workbook by yourself, going through the things and watching the instructional videos on how I actually do my setup, and very, very successfully starting seeds for many years after many trials and errors. I've honed in on it and it works wonderfully, and I plan to pass that knowledge on to you, so I'm excited that you're here. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, I love gardening for a lot of different reasons. And the love of the garden starts with a single seed, because it really does. All those tiny little seeds are packed full of so much. And God has just put everything inside those little seeds, and then you put it in the ground, and with the right warmth and sunlight and some water, they grow and they flourish and they produce fruit. And then the fruit inside of it has seeds, and then you eat the fruit and you live good. You save the seeds and then you plant them again, and then you start the process each year. It's so amazing how they work. I love gardening because you can just see so much of God's handiwork in it. And I appreciate everything that He has designed for us. And I love food, hence the word food prude. Check out my sign that my friend made. Isn't that amazing? I'll link her Etsy shop for you guys if anybody's interested. She does custom stuff. It was really cool to see my logo come alive. So anyways, sidetrack from the seed starting, has nothing to do with that, right? But thank you for being here. So let's get started with the seed starting. So you want to grab a notebook. You can print off extra paper and put it in a binder like I do, or you could have a specific gardening notebook. There's ones for gardening out there, or you could just grab a normal, 50-cent notebook from the store, which would be totally fine as well. But you want to keep track of everything, because you will appreciate looking back. Even if you don't do it every year, or if you can pass any of this knowledge down, keeping track is really important. So things like where you bought your seeds from, what the germination rate is, how many did you plant of that specific tomato type, and then how many came up, how you did your setup. And then you're going to want to take notes every single year, I promise you. And all your gardening endeavors, you want to take as many notes as you can. But you're going to want to look and say, hey, what worked for you, what didn't work that well, and what you would like to try different or try again the following year. And because you will forget. You think, oh, I can remember this, but no, you won't. You'll forget. So even when you get into the gardening, out into the actual gardening beyond the seed starting, you're going to want to have those notes as well to make sure you keep track of all that fun stuff. I keep track of the weather because it's very interesting to watch the weather patterns, and you have to base everything on the weather. So it's always good to kind of keep note. And yes, you can do searches and stuff like that, but writing specifically for your little climate, because there's microclimates on everybody's property, that's a little bit different. So easy peasy, grab a notebook or a paper or anything like that, that'll work. So the husband and I and the 3 kids, we homestead here in northern Michigan, and we have 38 acres, and we grow about 80% of our own food, which includes raising pork, pigs, and chickens as well for meat and eggs and stuff like that. But I have 3 very large gardens. I have an herb garden that has all kinds of herbs that I use for medicinal reasons, for salves and teas and tinctures that I absolutely love. We have fruit things growing all over here, fruit trees, and we try growing our apple orchard and grapes and raspberries, and we like to forage for lots of stuff as well. And then we have really 2 other gardens that I focus for growing these on. So the seeds, so I do all my own seeds, and I also sell some seedlings too to help cover the cost of the lights and the stuff like that. So it all works out really well. So you need to start with the correct seed. There's those cheap seeds that you can get from the dollar store. I would never recommend them. The germination rate is terrible. I have no idea where those seeds came from, and they're just cheap. I have no idea. So they're bad. So please don't buy seeds from there. You will be disappointed, and I don't want to set up anybody for failure, I guess, and then be disappointed and then kind of give up on the situation. So if you follow a lot of these directions in here, your success rates is going to be better, because I've been doing this for so long, and that's why I'm hoping to show you guys. So you always have to tailor it to exactly for what you have and what you can buy at the time and stuff like that. But this will help you be much more successful much sooner in the game, which is the goal, right? So not waste so much time. But mistakes are good to make, so don't be afraid to make mistakes or to say, oops, I didn't do as good on that particular spot. And that's when you learn, and you can customize it and fix it for you, for your family, for next year. So we need to start off with the correct seeds. So the seeds that I highly, highly recommend are heirloom seeds. You can get organic heirloom, that would probably be the best, or you could focus on heirloom seeds. And what an heirloom seed is basically like the stuff that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation, and you can seed save from heirloom seeds. So a lot of the seeds that you would get from the dollar store, or from like they're hybrid seeds, or from like the big box stores, if they're not marked heirloom or organic, you won't be able to actually seed save from them. And so that's something that you should also learn about as well. That's kind of at the end of the gardening season. This is the beginning of the gardening season. So you want to go for heirloom seeds. You definitely want to stay from any genetically modified seeds. They're starting to get into our market that we can buy personally, not just the big farmers and stuff like that. We don't want anything to do with that. They're made out of weird things, and that's a whole rabbit hole on that, but you can read a little bit more on there. And then the hybrid seeds, a lot of times what they do is take two different traits, different traits from the same thing, from two different types of that, and mix them together. And sometimes if you were to replant from them, from my understanding, it'll revert back to one of the traits, or to one of the types that they mixed. And you won't always get what you were expecting. You might get something funky or gross, or you're like, that was not quite what a pumpkin that I wanted. So you want to just kind of stick with the heirloom seeds. They feel like, for me, they feel like they're the healthiest choice out of things to pick from is the heirloom seeds. And then again, you can learn how to seed save, which is a lot easier than you think. So start with heirloom seeds. Now, another part that I really want to stress is direct sowing versus seed starting. So we're talking about seed starting, but what I have found that a lot of people want to seed start all their seeds. And when if you want to do 50 plants, let's say, which will end up taking up a big space for 50 plants, right? But maybe some of them were cucumbers or corn or peas or beans. All those things need to be planted directly in the garden. You do not need to waste your resources of sprouting them like we're going to be talking about today to get them started, because in, I would say, all climates, you don't need to pre-start beans or cucumbers and corn and stuff like that, because there's going to be plenty of enough time out there in the big garden for them to grow, and not use your resources for lighting, soil, heat mats, energy from running all this stuff, and space. So you're going to want to look at just seed starting what actually needs to be started indoors. And those are the things that have that longer time frame than what our climate, or like a northern climate, would allow. Because we get so many days that we can grow outside. And so tomatoes take longer than what we are given outside. So that's kind of why we start seeds inside about 6 to 8 weeks early for a tomato and pepper and stuff like that. So that's why we seed start those type of things, because they need a little bit longer growing season than what our outside can do. And it just kind of helps things go along. So make sure that you are paying attention to my list that I have on this page right here about what do we want to direct sow, where we're just going to buy our seed packets, which are so much cheaper than buying the actual seed plants itself, versus the seeds that we're going to be starting. So things like carrots, corn, cucumbers, peas, pumpkin, potatoes, radishes, squashes, zucchini, beans, beets, and lettuce. I mean, there's probably some other things too, right? There's a lot, but those are direct sown seeds. So go ahead and just buy seed packets, put those aside until we figure out our frost dates, and then we will put those directly into the ground. The other things that we need to start indoors typically are tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower, because they need that longer growing season. I talked to you about my favorite seeds to start indoors, like which ones I like, the certain type of spicy peppers, or my favorite kind of tomatoes, or celery, eggplant, cauliflower, cabbage, and broccoli. So those are my favorites. You can also watch the video that I've done about going through my seed binder and just talking about all the seeds and stuff like that. That's the video link down at the bottom of that particular page. Okay, so now the biggest question, or another big question, is like, when do you actually start your seeds indoors? And I will give a word of caution to not start prior to what you actually need to. What happens is you get really excited, we're bored in the winter, so you start planting your seeds a little too early. And I still find myself doing this because I'm in northern Michigan. I'm sick of like the snow accumulation and being inside all the time. I want to get out and planting. But then your plants will be huge by the time they get out there, which takes up a lot of room. and then they're in like 4 inches of soil, and they're like this tall. They're hanging over. So just exercise patience. Even if your seedlings of a tomato are only this big, they will have plenty of time to be out and growing in the garden. And so that is going to be just fine. So don't rush ahead. So what you're going to need to do is kind of just find your garden zone. That's just for a plant hardiness. That does not technically mean when you can plant or not plant. That's just kind of giving you guidance on what plants could survive in your particular area. But it's nice to know. So go ahead and find the zone by going to that website. Then you just do a quick internet search to find your last and first frost dates using your zip code, and go ahead and write them down on this page here. You're always going to want to keep track. They do kind of fluctuate because it kind of changes every year, and that's another thing you should write down in your notebook too, when it actually frosted and stuff like that. So what you're going to do is find your last frost date, which would be in the springtime, and then you're going to count back on your calendar 6 to 8 weeks for your tomatoes and peppers and herbs. And then, or for your tomatoes and herbs, you need about 6 to 8 weeks. And then you need 8 weeks for peppers, broccoli, cabbage, and celery. You need 8 weeks prior to that. And then if you're going to be doing onion seeds, which can be very tricky, you're going to want to go 12 to 16 weeks prior to that last frost date in spring. So you got to do a little, do a little search, look at your calendar, and then write down about the time frame that you're going to go ahead and want to get started. Before that day comes when we're going to start planting, you're going to want to make sure you have all your stuff purchased and ready to go. Sometimes they sell out of certain brands, and maybe you're looking forward to something, or there's lag time in deliveries, right? So you want to make sure you think of these things ahead of time and get them there. Seeds that you buy in packets last for years, so do not be afraid to go ahead and buy next year's seeds or keep them around. Do not worry about throwing them out. If they have a bad germination rate, then go ahead and throw them out. But if you get 80% to germinate, you're good to go. So I like to buy my seeds. The ones that I don't seed save from are from Baker Creek. I really enjoy them. They're all heirloom seeds. You just go to rareseeds.com. I will word of caution of them. They sell seeds for basically the whole world. So you have to be careful that you are kind of looking at like here, I would love to grow the loofah plant. A loofah thing sounds so cool to be able to grow that, but it needs such a warmer climate than I can provide here in Michigan that I've tried it. Trust me, it didn't work out at all. So I would not want to buy those. There's certain things that are not going to be good for your area. So you just kind of want to look at them. Sometimes they give instruction kind of like what climate would be good in. If you're in a northern climate and it says it needs tropical, don't buy that one, unfortunately. Maybe just go take a visit to a tropical spot and go eat it there or whatever. I really like Siskiyou seeds. They seem to be a really good company with a lot of integrity, and they have a great site for all kinds of seeds and herbs, and I'm trying them for some other different types of seeds this year as well. And another good one to try is M.I. Gardner. They're in Michigan. They do all heirloom, and they are really good on price. The seed packets are smaller, but sometimes you don't need 100 seeds of something. You just need 10, so it works out good. If you're going to go ahead and try to do strawberries or onions or potatoes, I give those resources in there, which is not necessarily about seed starting, but I still like to share my resources of where I have found. You're going to want to start with really good soil. I don't know if if that particular company is available everywhere, but I really like them. What I have found with using Dairy Dew is that I don't actually have to end up fertilizing my seedlings while they're growing in my grow room for the 6 to 8 weeks prior to getting them out. I will fertilize them out later on in the garden, but for that time that I'm in the seedlings in the grow room, I do not need to fertilize them using Dairy Dew. If they're sluggish or they're turning colors or something like that, then you just pick up a fertilizer, and I talk about the recommendations in here too as well. But so start with a good soil if you can find it that is for seed starting. So something that says a seed starting mixture. It usually has a little more extra to it to get going. All right, these are my supplies to purchase. The first page is from the Greenhouse Mega Store. You can find comparable stuff as well on your own searching if you'd like. These are just what I use that have worked so well, and I highly recommend them. These are my particular trays that I really like. I plant about 500 to 600 different seedlings So I use a lot of different stuff. And so you may not need that much, but you can buy them in smaller quantities. But this is a very successful method of using it. So copy it as much as you can, according to your budget, of course. So we've got the tray that goes on the bottom. You see the picture there. It has no holes in the bottom. And we're going to talk about that later, but this is very important. Inside that tray, you will get different kinds of inserts. So at first, it'll be like a plug cell insert type of thing where you can seed start anywhere. I think this one's 50. I like to start 50 to a tray. Then they get transplanted up. You're going to need a dome lid, which helps keep like the greenhouse effect in the soil there. The moist soil kind of keeps them warmer. And then eventually they'll be potted up to the 4-inch square black form pots, which those pots will then be back into the bigger trays on the first top picture there. You will also need heat mats. This is highly recommend to get heat mats. They're $20. Each heat mat will fit one tray. And the success rate of using a heat mat is phenomenal. And then you're also going to need to find some good lights. You can, if you have lights that are coming in from a certain angle with the sun is really strong, you've got the big bay window, you can grow them there instead of buying lights. They won't be as strong or maybe as good, but they will be good enough, I guess is my wording. So if you can afford to get lights, I would go ahead and get lights. You have to kind of look at your setup, how you can hang it. So my favorite one is that Vivar Spectra. They work so good. You can actually grow year round. I've done that before, growing tomatoes and beans and other stuff like that with those lights. So I have worked really good. So they're really strong. They're about $200 for this, but they cover a really big section. So that could be an investment to think about that. You have to buy something though that they can hang on. I happen to have a grow room, which you will see in the videos later on, how they are hung there. But in that Greenhouse Mega Store, they actually have like, like things like this that you could put them on as well. So kind of stuff to, dependent on what you have available and of course your budget. But definitely need a light and a heat mat. And then you're going to need garden tags. Please buy plastic. I hate plastic, but you need to buy plastic for the garden tags, because the wooden ones will absolutely turn moldy and then ruin your soil for your seeds. They are useless and not nice, and I don't like them. So please don't do popsicle sticks. I've done it. It doesn't work. They get moldy. Hello, they're in moist soil all the time, right? That is one of my favorite diggers there. I absolutely love that. All these links in the workbook are clickable on your computer in the downloadable PDF. Once you print it, obviously you can't click it, but on your computer they're all going to go to my Amazon or specifically to that site so say this is what I'm actually suggesting. If you click on any of those links, that all supports the website and my endeavors and teaching as well, so I appreciate that. And then those are spray bottles that I actually use for a lot of different cleaning products, but they spray really, really nice. And we'll talk about spraying water later on when we get started. Okay, so we have our supplies. Now we need to go ahead and get started. And the videos will show exactly how to, how it looks and stuff like that. So you're going to want to mix your soil with your water. And then you're going to, you grab a handful, and I show it in the video, and you squeeze it. And I just want it to drop, drop, drop. And if it drops like that, then that's a perfect moisture level that you're going to want to go ahead. You're going to fill in your trays with the little tiny other little cells, and you're just going to fill it in. But do not pack the soil in. It doesn't need a lot at this point. And then you're going to take an end of a marker or your finger, and you're just going to put a hole in each of them, each of those 50 things or whatever you got going on. And then you're going to go ahead and start to mark out with the tags, like, hey, I want this row to be Tappy's tomatoes, and this row to be the Brunswick tomatoes, or not Brunswick, that's a cabbage, it's another kind of tomato. And you would like to, depending on the quantity that you are seed starting, you're going to want to put your tomatoes together the most you can, and peppers, because sometimes they will germinate at the different rate, and you're going to want to remove that from the heat mat at the same time. But like that for cauliflower, the cruciferous stuff like cabbage, cauliflower, and celery, they take a lot longer to pop up and to germinate. So kind of put those in one area, and then your tomatoes and peppers in another one, because they come up a lot quicker. The tomatoes come up the quickest. So kind of, if you're doing a bunch, you know, try to organize it like that. Then you're going to go ahead and put in your seeds according to what you decide to plant. And the rule of thumb is the depth to plant the seed starting, or even out in your garden, is twice the depth of the seed. So if you can think, a tomato seed is pretty small, so you just basically are pushing it in a little bit and covering it up, and that is it. A bean seed, which you would put outside, are a lot bigger. You would actually go double the length and push it in the double of the bean seed out there. Then you don't have to look at the back of the seed packets to figure your thing out. You just need it in a little bit. Salad, lettuce seeds, carrot seeds are almost sprinkled on top, and you barely tamp them in. All right, so this is where the spray bottle comes into play here. You want to use a spray bottle at first to keep your soil moist. The soil needs to be moist the whole entire time that the seeds are germinating. If they dry out, they basically don't want to sprout for you. So, but you don't want it soaked, right? So a spray bottle does a great job of not compacting the soil, and you're losing the seed inside the little spots, and it keeps it nice and wet, just enough on top. So you're just going to make sure you are always constantly spraying. Again, not soaking, but getting a nice layer of moisture on there so those seeds will germinate for you. All right, then after, you know, depending on what it is, several days to a week, you're going to have that tray on with the dome. I like to always leave the, there's like a lid area, or like a hole area. Leave that open. Put the dome on top. Put all of that onto your heat mat there, and plug that in, and that'll be good to go for until they germinate. Once the majority have germinated, you're going to want to remove that heat mat. You can go ahead and keep the dome lid on until they want to go past the dome lid, which would be fine. But you want to go ahead and get that heat out of there, or they'll grow too spindly and too leggy already. So this is a good way just to like minimize them getting wimpy already on you, is going ahead to take the heat away. So once the heat goes, that's when you're going to want to give the light. If you do not give any light, they will just go ahead and they will wither and die. So you want to keep the light about 6 to 8 inches above the seedlings itself. But you should make sure that you read the booklet that comes with whatever light choice that you did, because you want to keep them at a certain level above it, because you don't want them to be reaching for the light where they can't reach it, so their energy is going to try to get too tall. So they just want to be perfect, but you don't want them to get too close, because then they start to want to bend down and grow funny. So you got to kind of find that perfect level where they're like, okay, I'm just growing at a nice rate. And you can go ahead and watch those videos as well. There's lots of videos on all those different type of steps. I just wanted to verbalize everything prior to watching all the steps to help give some clues, okay? Just trying to give you as much information as I possibly can to set you up for success. Okay, once your seedlings have 2 to 3 sets of true leaves, and you'll be able to tell when they start wanting to grow out of that little cells, of those little tiny spots, you're going to want to go ahead and then transplant them up into the 4-inch pots. So again, you're going to fill those things back up with soil, and then you're going to put those 4-inch pots into those big trays there, and you'll be able to fit in, I think, 8 to 10 per tray there of the 4-inch pots. Depending, of course, you can squeeze some in. You can actually fit it probably to 15 if you squeeze them in, but sometimes when the plants start getting bigger, especially like tomatoes, they've got all those little fine sticky hairs that want to kind of hang out with each other, so you got to be careful with squashing them in too much. So we have transplanted them up. You're going to want to keep them watered by watering in the tray itself, not on top of the plant like you would normally see in a greenhouse, because the water comes down, that compacts the soil and gets too moldy on top. So what you want to do is fill in the bottom on the tray itself. Just get, you know, a normal watering can and fill in the bottom, and to keep it about 1 inch or 2 there. That way the roots get stronger by going down into the water and sucking up what they need. That's exactly what they do out in nature. They go down into the ground to find the nutrients and to find the water, which makes them stronger. So keep that in mind for your garden outside as well. So that is my preferred way of watering. It just does such a great job of doing that. Another idea is what helps a lot with mold forming on top and to make the plant stronger is to have a fan on them. You don't have to have them whipping around, but just some air circulation going all the time. It helps a tremendous amount, so that's a really good thing. At this point, you're probably several weeks in. This is where, do they need to be fertilized or not? If they feel like they are stunted, like they're not doing anything, go ahead and try some kind of fertilizer. I suggest Fox Farm or Alaska Fish fertilizer. Okay, so now it's getting almost time to your spring last frost date. About a week or two ahead of that, you're going to want to start to harden them off, which means to make them, they've had such a cozy life and a nice warm spot, and you've talked to them and you've sprayed them and you've watched them grow. They're going to have to go out to that big old garden with that harsh sun and stuff like that, so you got to want to harden them off. Basically what that is for the first 2 days or something like that, you're going to take all your plants outside in the shade for an hour or two, just so they can kind of feel what it's like to be out there in the real world. Bring them back in. It is a bit of a hard process depending on how many plants. Trust me, my kids know. And then the next day you do it out maybe a little bit longer. And then a couple days in, you put them into the sun for a half hour. Then you put them back. Then the next day you put them into the sun for a couple hours. And you're kind of watching them, making sure they're not getting burnt or anything like that. But that way they're getting acclimated to the outside, to the sun, and to the weather, and to your climate and stuff like that. So you need to harden them off so you don't burn them when you put them right into the ground. All right, so once that frost date has passed, go ahead and start to plant them outside. I do caution saying don't prematurely plant them outside if you think the frost is still going to happen. Even if you do cover them up, I feel like it kind of stunts them and kind of damages them when you could have just left them in for a couple more days into their nice and safe area and didn't give them any harshness going on. So try to be patient again. That's the key to a lot of things, is being patient, having them be outside or being in your area safe until you know that the frost date has passed, and then go ahead and get them planted outside. I have other videos on my site showing how do I do some of the planting. Of course, there's my ultimate gardening bundle that talks about all kinds of my gardening resources about how now to then take care of them out in the garden itself. If you're in Northern Michigan, I teach in-person classes as well. And then, of course, there's seed saving. That is a big full circle situation. Start with a seed, end with a seed, right? So thank you for being here. There's lots of videos that's going to walk you through that. So if it felt overwhelming or like, what is she talking about? Honestly, once you start seeing it and do it, it'll all be like a piece of cake to you. I just wanted to do a video to kick it off and get started with you guys, and just so I can say hi. So thanks for being here, and you can ask questions. So please reach out to Laura@foodprude.com or submit a question on any of the forums like that. I would love to hear from you, and I wish you the best.